Blog Talk Radio. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Stress is Stressing Me Out podcast. I am your host, Maki Adeyemi, and today we will be discussing worrying and living in the moment. Before I get into today's devotional, I want to apologize. Usually I record my podcast on Friday, edit, and release it on Saturday night. This past Friday, I forgot that I had to work. If I didn't say it before, my first job is being a school teacher, and my second job is doing home health. And I totally forgot I had to work on Friday. I worked from 9 to 5. By the time I got home, I was completely tired, and I put off recording this podcast until today, which is Sunday. So I do apologize for that. So let's get into today's devotional. And our devotional will be coming from 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 10. And it says, "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." And that's 1 Peter 2:9. The name of this devotional is called Caring Letters. Decades ago, Dr. Jerry Motto discovered the power of a caring letter. His research found that simply sending a letter expressing care to discharged patients who had previously attempted suicide reduced the rate of recurrence by half. Recently, healthcare providers have rediscovered this power when sending caring texts, postcards, and even social media memes as follow-up treatment for the severely depressed. 21 books in the Bible are actually letters, epistles, caringly written to first-century believers who struggled for a variety of reasons. Paul, James, and John wrote letters to explain the basics of faith and worship and to resolve conflict and build unity. The Apostle Peter, however, specifically wrote to believers who were being persecuted by the Roman Emperor, Nero. Peter reminded them of their intrinsic value to God, describing them this way in 1 Peter 2 through 9. "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." This lifted their gaze to God's great purpose for them in their world, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. Our great God Himself wrote a book filled with caring letters to us, inspired scripture, that we might always have a record of the value He assigns us as His own. May we read His letters daily and share them with others who need the hope Jesus offers. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. It is called Stop the Worrying and Live in the Moment. We often hear people talk about the importance of living in the moment and the different ways it will benefit us. It all sounds wonderful, especially the lower levels of stress and anxiety. But how exactly can we live in the present when our mind is constantly worrying about the past or planning for the future? The importance of living in the moment. While it can be difficult to live in the moment, it has innumerable benefits. Here are just a few that will enhance your life tremendously. Number 1, better health. By reducing stress and anxiety, you avoid many of the associated health consequences, such as high blood pressure, heart disease, and obesity. Studies have shown that being present in the moment can also improve psychological well-being. Number 2, improve your relationships. Have you ever been with someone who is physically present, but mentally he or she is a million miles away? Being with unavailable people is a struggle, and building relationships with them is extremely difficult. How about being with someone who is fully present? We enjoy being with him or her because we can make a much deeper connection. By living in the moment, you can be that person other people enjoy being with, and you can make relationships much easier. Number 3, great self-control or greater self-control. You have greater control over your mind, body, and emotions when you're living in the moment. Imagine how much better your life would be if it weren't at the mercy of a racing mind and unpredictable emotions. You would certainly be more at peace and much happier. Why do we worry? Before we answer this question, it's important to distinguish between worry and concern. When we are concerned about something, we are more likely dealing with a real problem with realistic solutions. Then once we do whatever we can do to address the problem, we're willing to live with the outcome. Worrying, on the other hand, involves unrealistic thinking. We may worry about a problem that doesn't really exist, or dwell on the bad things that can happen as a result. Thus, we feel unable to deal with outcomes. Either way, we have difficulty dealing with uncertainty, which is a normal part of life. Certainly, some of our problems may not have desirable outcomes, such as serious health issues. Some problems may be beyond our control, such as civil unrest or economic downturn. In such cases, it can be hard to avoid worrying, but not impossible. Number 1, overcoming worry. Worrying, we need to do 2 things. Number 1, calm your mind. When you calm your mind, you are able to see more clearly. The reason some problems seem so daunting is that our mind is racing so fast that we cannot see things as they truly are. Then we make up a bunch of possible scenarios in our mind, most of which are unlikely to come true. In addition to seeing more clearly, a calm mind will help us think more realistically. Unrealistic thinking is fueled by confusion and uncontrolled emotions. Calming your mind will reduce confusion and calm your emotions, allowing you to live in the present. Number 2, focus on solutions instead of problems. Some people tend to be more solution-oriented and others more problem-oriented. Some of the factors that may determine this are gender, upbringing, and education. People with more education tend to be problem solvers. That is what their years of education train them to do. In addition, their jobs probably reinforce this way of thinking. If you're not problem-solving oriented, don't worry. You can train yourself to worry less. We'll discuss that here in a minute. Number 2, identify obstacles to living in the moment. In today's busy world, it can be a challenge to live in the moment. The reasons revolve around how our mind works and how well outside influences. A racing mind. Many people believe having a racing mind that never seems to slow down. Their mind gets so agitated from too much sensory stimulation. You see, anything that stimulates any of our 5 senses will trigger a thought, and that thought leads to another, and then another, and so forth. If you have a busy life, all your activities will overstimulate your mind and make it seemingly impossible to slow it down. Okay. The unpleasant situations and a troublesome past. None of us want to be in unpleasant situations or remember those of the past. They can bring up painful emotions which we do not want to feel. So how do most people cope with painful emotions? By doing whatever we can to avoid them. We can take our mind to another place and time where things are more pleasant. We avoid living in the present moment. Some people resort to things that stimulate sensory pleasure, such as food, alcohol, or sex. Others will consume substances that dull their mind and keep them from thinking about unpleasant or stressful situations. A wandering mind. From the moment we are born until the time we do die, our body and mind are actively performing some function. Therefore, it is natural for our mind to have some level of activity, whether conscious or unconscious. Generally, a wandering mind is unproductive. One thought starts an endless chain of thoughts, and this process can go on until we need our mind to perform a specific function or get distracted with something else. Now there are times when a wandering mind can be productive, such as when creating works of art or trying to find creative solutions to problems. In such cases, we need our mind to explore different possibilities. Outside influences. Most of us are not fully aware of how our environment and social norms influence our thinking and behavior. People and institutions are constantly competing for our attention. The media draws our attention to the past and advertising usually to the future. Many people around us dwell on the past or future, try to draw us to their way of thinking. Even the whole concept of the American dream is geared towards the future. It tells us that if we require things like a good career, family, and house, then we'll be happy, which does nothing to help us learn how to be present. Number 3, practice mindfulness. The concept of mindfulness is actually quite simple. To be mindful is to live in the moment. When you are mindful, your attention is focused on what is happening in the present moment, and you are fully in touch with reality. You are aware of what is happening in your body, mind, emotions, and the world around you. This is different than thinking about these things. To develop a greater understanding, you don't have to think about them so much, but rather just observe them. We're going to take a quick break, and I will be back with Maki's 2 cents. Here's my 2 cents. Practicing mindfulness is like regularly putting small amounts of change in a jar. They will add up over time, and this will add up to greater peace and happiness as you start living in the moment. Remember, you don't have to do the mindfulness practices perfectly to get the benefits. All you have to do is keep bringing your mind back to the present moment when it wanders off. The benefits of living in the moment are well within your reach, no matter how much your mind is racing. If you stick with these mindfulness practices, you too will learn how to live in the moment and stop worrying. When you do, a whole new world will open up for you. I was in Walmart this past Friday evening after work, and I saw a shirt that said, "Inhale the future, exhale the past." We all need to work on that. even me. So what do you think? What are your thoughts? Tweet me at stressingisor email me at sismo1875@gmail.com. You can find this podcast on Stitcher, Google Plays, Spotify, TuneIn, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, and now on iHeartRadio. Until next week, let not your heart be troubled. Relax.